I was publicly humiliated at my own engagement party, yet I managed to turn the whole spectacle around to the point where her parents were apologizing to me, even rushing to give the ring back. She cried, saying, "I'll die without you," but I just gave a slight nod and walked away. Who would have thought the same woman who'd once driven her male best friend to the ER overnight for a paper cut would hold his hand in front of our families and demand I cough up an extra $100,000 for his down payment? Even her own parents stood up for me. Later, at the police station, she saw the proof of how her best friend had drugged, manipulated, and betrayed her for money. Yet she still looked at me through the security camera and tearfully swore, "You're the only one I've ever loved." And me, the doormat everyone thought deserved to be cheated on? I was the one forced into bed with his pawn of a fiancé, the one who went through drug withdrawal with her, becoming comrades forged in hell. By the time she took a knife and stabbed her best friend 18 times in his hospital room, leaving me a final message saying, "For once, I'm not being selfish," I was already sitting beside another woman, learning to finally say, "Let the past be the past." Because at our engagement party, my fiancée, Miriam, showed up with her male best friend in tow. With a look of utter impatience, Miriam announced, "We're going to need another $100,000 from you." My parents exchanged a look before turning their eyes to me. "Why?" I asked. In front of both our families and a crowd of our closest friends, Miriam grabbed her best friend Joey's hand. "Because Joey is short on a down payment for a house," she declared. "If you don't add that money to our wedding fund so he can afford it, then this wedding is off." I forced a smile. "If you're this worried about Joey, why don't you two just get married instead? I'm not the one who needs a house. The only thing that needs looking into is what Joey's fiancée is like. I've met her, and she's a wonderful person." I'd heard stories like this before. A friend of mine went through something similar, with his wife wanting to unconditionally support her younger brother financially. But at least they were actual siblings, bound by blood. Miriam's situation was different. She was hell-bent on propping up her male best friend, Joey. "I need an answer now," she said, her patience clearly wearing thin. "I'm running out of it." Her hand was still tightly clasped in Joey's. Joey, who always projected a soft-spoken, almost fragile image, shot me a look of pure defiance and disdain. The private banquet hall we booked was filled with 60 or 70 of our closest friends and family members. And in that moment, every single one of them was staring at me. In a situation like this, I was the one being publicly shamed, put on the spot for everyone to see. Just think about it. Could you stand there while your own fiancé holds another man's hand and demands you pay for his house? "If you're that concerned about Joey," I repeated, my voice perfectly level, my eyes holding hers without a flicker of anger, "then the two of you should just be together. I'm not the one who needs a house. In fact, I should probably check in on Joey's fiancé. I've met her, and she's a really great woman." "Are you insane, Edward?" Miriam screamed, slamming her hand on the table. "I'm only asking you for a little more money. What is wrong with you? Do you hear the words coming out of your mouth?" She had zero respect for me. She had no respect for my parents. Hell, she didn't even have any respect for her own family. She had always been breathtakingly selfish. I just shook my head, a small smile on my face, and kept my voice calm. "Miriam, I'm not saying this to be spiteful. This is a completely rational decision. We are done." "Edward Carter," she shrieked. "How dare you speak to me like that? I will end you." As if a switch had flipped, Miriam scrambled onto the table and lunged right at me. I just watched her, my heart perfectly still, without a single ripple of emotion. The woman who was once so elegant and composed had transformed into a rabid animal. And me, the guy who used to have a short fuse and fly off the handle, was now strangely completely calm. It's funny how people work. When disappointment builds up to a breaking point, you don't scream and shout anymore. You just slide to the opposite extreme, cold indifference. I used to love Miriam more than myself. That's the only reason I ever put up with her having that male best friend constantly at her side. Of course I got jealous, but the second she was unhappy, I'd instantly turn into a complete doormat, giving in to anything just to make her happy again. She always swore that Joey wasn't into women, and his effeminate mannerisms really did make it seem plausible. That was probably the only reason I could stomach the situation at all. But then, out of nowhere, Joey gets himself a fiancée, and she turned out to be a very talented author. Even after that, Miriam and Joey were still practically joined at the hip. She even had the nerve to say to my face, "Joey's engaged now, and his fiancée doesn't get jealous at all. You're a grown man, so why are you being so petty? Act like a man for once." Emotional manipulation is a gradual thing. By the time I finally recognized it, she already had me wrapped around her little finger. One time, I was sick with a high fever, my throat burning, and my head splitting open. All I did was ask her to give me a glass of water. She gave me a massive eye roll, her face a mask of annoyance, and when she returned, she looked like she wanted to splash scalding water on me. Yet, when Joey lightly scratched his finger peeling an apple one night, Miriam shot out of bed, threw on a coat, and drove him to the emergency room at 3 in the morning. I could write a book with all the stories like that. Call it love, call it being brainwashed, it doesn't really matter anymore. The moment Miriam held Joey's hand in front of everyone and demanded more money from me to buy him a house, everything was over. Over the years, she had slowly, piece by piece, ground my self-respect into dust. The second that final shred of dignity was crushed, I became a man with nothing left to lose. And a man with no dignity has nothing left to fear. Eventually, her parents and a few friends managed to wrestle her off the table, but she didn't quiet down, just kept screaming insults at me. Edward, you dare break up with me? I was so wrong about you. I'm telling you, nothing has ever happened between me and Joey. But after what you did tonight, I'm going to make sure I sleep with him just to make you furious. It was a public declaration that she intended to cheat on me. And honestly, it stung. But that was all. It was far from soul-crushing. In their eyes, I was already a walking punchline, the guy who was getting cheated on. After all, Miriam and Joey were always inseparable. Whenever the three of us went shopping, she would walk ahead, arm in arm with Joey, while I trailed behind like a pack mule, carrying all the bags. If I ever dared to complain, she'd just laugh it off, calling Joey her bestie and telling me not to be so small-minded, that I should be more of a man. It was the same when we went out for dinner. She and Joey had to sit next to each other, leaving me on the opposite side of the table like some awkward outsider. We even went camping once, and she actually expected me to stay up all night on watch while she and Joey slept soundly in the tent. The old me was a classic doormat. Whatever she said, I believed. Whatever she did, I forgave. But that was the old me. Everyone, I said, getting to my feet and surveying the room of friends and family. First, I want to apologize for this entire mess tonight. I nodded in Miriam's direction, but as you all just witnessed, she demanded in front of all of you that I increase our wedding fund for the sole purpose of buying a house for her male friend. Given the circumstances, I believe any reasonable person would understand the decision I just made. Every member of my family looked furious. My buddies in the front row looked like they were seconds away from starting a brawl. To be fair, Miriam's parents didn't try to make excuses for her. They were silent through the whole thing. And one more thing, I added calmly. Since the engagement is off, I'll be coming by to pick up the ring and all the other gifts I gave her sometime in the next few days. Miriam's mother finally rose to her feet, her face a portrait of pain and humiliation. Edward, none of this is your fault, she said, her voice strained. Miriam is being foolish. Don't you worry. I'll make sure you get the ring and every single gift back. Her father slowly got up, allowed a long sigh, and bowed his head to me. What happened here tonight was my failure as a father. Apologies are meaningless now, but I will do everything I can to make things right. He looked at me, his eyes filled with sorrow. Edward, I've told you this before. Even if you and Miriam ever went your separate ways, I'd still consider you a friend. You come visit this old man sometime. You hear me? I closed my eyes and nodded, a sharp pang of sadness washing over me. The sadness wasn't really about Miriam. What hurt the most was seeing her parents, this kind, elderly couple, go through this. Her mother is a respected teacher, and her father is a retired police captain from the LAPD. They're genuinely good, honorable people. From the day Miriam and I started dating, I got along wonderfully with them. They treated me less like a future son-in-law and more like their own son. My parents got along great with them too. Frankly, if it weren't for our respect for her parents, my own folks would never have put up with Miriam's behavior for this long. But they were both too busy with their careers when she was young, so they asked Joey's family to help raise her. Growing up like that, she slowly developed that intensely self-centered personality of hers. You two senile old fools. Miriam shrieked. I'm your daughter. Why aren't you defending me? Miriam, who had just been pulled away, broke free and charged back, grabbing a fistful of her mother's hair. You useless bitch. You were never there for me as a kid, and now that my engagement is ruined, you're taking his side? Why don't you just drop dead? This was a side of Miriam I had never seen before. She'd always been selfish, but she'd at least maintained a veneer of class and elegance. Now that facade had completely crumbled, and she was totally unhinged. Joey, however, suddenly lunged toward me. Edward, what kind of man are you? Bullying a sweet girl like Miriam. You've been together for 5 years. This is how you treat her? He yelled, trying to claw my face. Before he could even touch me, my friend were on him. They had him pinned against the table in seconds, for guys holding him so tight he couldn't move an inch. I calmly loosened my tie. You're depending on a woman to shake down her fiancé for your down payment, and you have the audacity to question my manhood? If I had actually agreed to your little demand, that's when I'd have to question it myself. Just then, hotel security rushed in and began pulling people apart. Miriam stared daggers at me, her eyes burning with rage. Edward, I'm giving you one last chance, she said. Agree to buy Joey the house, and we can pretend tonight never happened. I can even forgive you. We're done. That's all I said before turning my back and walking out. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. It was a text saying Miriam and Joey were still making a scene back at the restaurant, trashing me in front of everyone, and even getting into a shoving match with my relatives. One of my friends sent me a voice message. Don't worry. worry about it, man. We'll handle it. It's just a shouting match. Nothing serious. When I got back to my apartment, I collapsed on the sofa and just stared into space. The love was gone, and so was the pity. But there was still a dull, lingering ache. It felt like quitting smoking. You know it's bad for you, but you still have that subconscious urge for one more drag. I knew perfectly well that Miriam and I were a terrible match, but some small part of me just wasn't ready to let go completely. I bought this apartment on my own, thanks to a boss who believed in me and years of solid work. I poured my heart and soul into renovating it, designing every detail to make it a real home for us. But Miriam flat out refused to move in. Her reason was simple. It's too far from Joey's apartment. She even suggested I sell my place at a loss to buy a new one closer to his. Or even better, that I should just buy Joey an apartment right here in my building. Looking back on it now, I've been a clown in this relationship from the very beginning. Back in college, I was drawn to Miriam's bright, sunny personality. She was always so vibrant and full of life, and I fell for her completely. I started chasing her, completely oblivious to the fact that she was a wreck because Joey was about to leave for a semester abroad. She only agreed to date me as a distraction, as a way to get over him. And I say distraction because the moment Joey came back, it was like I was completely erased from her memory. I sighed and started gathering up everything in the apartment that reminded me of her. There wasn't much, to be honest. She never really made this place her own, except for the wall of framed photos of herself from every conceivable angle. I was in the middle of packing when the door swung open. I have a smart lock. She'd refused to live here, but she'd made sure to add her fingerprint to the system. She stood in the doorway, eyes bloodshot, staring daggers at me. "Edward, your trashy friends beat up Joey, and you didn't even have the decency to show your face?" "First of all," I said, my voice even, "my friends are all professionals and leaders in their fields. Even the guy who delivers for DoorDash is one of the best riders we know. Secondly, from what I heard, Joey was the one running his mouth first, which is why he got punched. He asked for it, and he got it. Third, it was a shoving match, which is a civil matter at best. If he feels so aggrieved, he can go to the hospital, get a medical report, and have his lawyer send us the bill. And fourth, Miriam, this is my home, and you are no longer welcome here. Please leave." I finished and dropped a large black trash bag at her feet. "It's full of your pictures. You can take it with you, or I can throw it out. Your choice." "Don't give me that crap," she exploded. "You're just being petty and throwing a jealous fit. You think I can't see that?" She rolled her eyes and sneered. "God, Edward, you're so pathetic I could laugh. Is this your attempt at emotionally blackmailing me? Dream on. I'm not falling for it. And as for breaking up, it's not happening. I don't agree to it." She jabbed a finger at my chest. "I'm warning you. Go and apologize to Joey right now. If you don't, I will never, ever forgive you. Miriam, I was good to you because I loved you. But I don't love you anymore," I said, my voice ice cold. "So please, face reality. I'm breaking up with you. This isn't a test, and it's not an act." She obviously didn't believe me. "I don't believe you. Not unless you post it on Facebook right now for everyone to see." "As you wish." I pulled out my phone, typed out a short message, and hit post. "I, Edward Carter, have officially broken up with Miriam Vance," I read aloud. "There, it's done." Miriam stared at me, stunned, before fumbling for her own phone and desperately refreshing her feed. "Why can't I see it?" she demanded. A cold smile crept across my face. "Because you blocked me a long time ago. That way you could post whatever you wanted without me seeing what you and Joey were up to." In that single moment, all the anger and defiance vanished from her face, replaced by a raw, bone-deep panic. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm and shaking her head frantically. "Edward, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I was wrong. I'll change. I swear it. Please, just forgive me this one time. Give me another chance. No, Miriam, we're broken up. Please, for your own sake, try to have a little dignity. From now on, just pretend I don't exist." I pulled my arm free and pushed her out the door. I always thought that cutting Miriam out of my life completely would be excruciating. But in the instant the door slammed shut, all I felt was an indescribable lightness, like a massive weight had finally been lifted off my chest. Why had I wasted so much of my life loving a person who clearly didn't give a damn about me? I could find someone who actually cared about me. It wasn't impossible. Why was I so determined to set myself on fire for her? I'm not some lesser being. I was just an idiot. But from the moment I pushed her out that door, that idiot was gone. I threw the deadbolt and immediately went into the smart lock settings and deleted her fingerprint. I could hear the beep of the lock as she tried her fingerprint again and again. When she realized it wouldn't work, she started hammering on the door with her fists. Soon, her racket woke the neighbors and someone called security. She was screaming hysterically at the security guards. "This is my apartment, my fiancé, and I own this place. Don't you dare touch me." I opened the door. The woman standing there, with her makeup smeared and hair a mess, had lost every trace of her usual composure. A wild, desperate hope flickered in her eyes. "Honey, please don't do this to me," she sobbed, gasping for air. "I know I was wrong. I really do. Just give me one more chance, please." I just shook my head and turned to the guards. "I have no relationship with this woman. Please make sure she is not allowed back in the building. Thank you." "Edward, honey, you can't do this," she shrieked, her voice raw. "We've been together for 5 years. I gave you the best 5 years of my life. You can't just throw me away." My neighbor from next door, a guy in his 40s, poked his head out. "Hey man," he said in a low voice, "unless she did something terrible, maybe you should cut her some slack? Look at the state she's in." I gave him a weak, bitter smile. At our engagement party, in front of everyone, she demanded I add another $100,000 to the wedding gifts. It was for her male best friend's down payment. The words $100,000 made his eyes go wide. By the time I finished the sentence, his expression had shifted to one of profound sympathy. The security guards, who had been a little hesitant, suddenly firmed up and began escorting Miriam toward the elevator. "Honey, it's not what you think. I can explain." Her voice was cut short as the elevator door slid shut. "Hey man," my neighbor said, looking me over. "You want me to grab you a beer?" I shook my head. "Got work tomorrow. Thanks for the offer, though. Maybe next time." Drown my sorrows over Miriam? She wasn't worth the hangover. The next day, I invited all our friends and family back to the hotel for a meal, a way of formally apologizing for the disaster. A lot of them had taken time off work and traveled from out of town to be there. So, as awful as the whole situation was, everyone was on my side. They all supported my decision to call things off. I couldn't let them have made the trip for nothing, so I offered to cover all their travel expenses. I told them to stay a few extra days if they wanted and treat it as a free vacation on me. After I got both families settled and was driving my parents home, they kept looking like they wanted to say something comforting, but they couldn't find the words. I just smiled and said, "It's okay, really. I've already made peace with it." After I saw them off, I headed to my car to drive to the office. Just as I reached it, a slim figure appeared beside me. She was wearing a simple white dress and thick, black-framed glasses that gave her a quiet, scholarly air. It was Joey's fiancée, Chloe Hayes. "Why did you have your friends beat up Joey?" she asked, getting straight to the point. I was taken aback for a second. Could she really be that clueless about her own fiancé? "Yesterday was my engagement party," I said. On the spot, Miriam demanded that I produce an extra $100,000 to buy a house for Joey. "Were you aware of that?" Chloe frowned. "That's completely insane. If I put that in one of my books, my readers would call it trashy melodrama." "It was that insane," I said, leaning against my car and lighting a cigarette. "Sounds like you don't know your fiancé all that well." "Maybe not," she admitted after a moment. "We were set up by mutual friends. My writing schedule is a mess, so I don't get out much. He was always telling me he was hanging out with you and Miriam, so I never gave a second thought. But from what you're describing, it sounds like there's something shady going on between Joey and Miriam." She said it with an unmistakable hint of excitement in her voice. "Is this just how writers' brains work?" "Well, that's the gist of it," I said with a shrug. "So if you're here to pick a fight, you've come to the wrong guy." Chloe nodded. "Right, I get it. Well, I won't keep you from work. I'm gonna go break up with Joey now." With that, she turned and jogged over to a little Chevy Bolt, hopped in, and zipped away. From a distance, the car looked like a little white egg scooting down the street. When I got to the office, word had already spread, and pretty much everyone was on my side. A couple of coworkers had been at the party, so the story was all over the department. My boss called me in his office and offered me a few days off if I needed time to clear my head. I told him I was fine, that it wouldn't affect my work. Then I just buried myself in work, barely looking up for the rest of the day. Miriam called again and again. I'd block her number, and she'd immediately call from a new one. I'd block that, and a new, unknown number would pop up. Finally, fed up, I tossed my phone to our intern. "Screen my calls. If it's Miriam, hang up. If it's a client, put them through." But Miriam was clever. She called again, pretending to be a potential client, and I accidentally picked up. "Edward, I know I was wrong. I really do," she sobbed into the phone. "Please, just give me one more chance, okay? Just one chance, and I'll prove how much I love you." I took a deep breath. "Miriam, you're seriously disrupting my workday. My clients can't get through because you keep calling. Then you have to promise you'll come home for dinner tonight," she demanded. "Give me a chance to talk to you. If you don't, I'll just keep calling. I won't stop." She was sounding completely unhinged. I couldn't let my personal drama affect the company, so I reluctantly agreed. Just before I hung up, I could hear a triumphant little squeal she couldn't quite contain. I sighed and turned to the intern. "Go get me a new SIM card and text the new number to all my clients." When I got home from work, the smell of a home-cooked meal hit me as soon as I walked in. In the open kitchen, Miriam was bustling around, stirring something in a pan, then chopping vegetables at the counter. I was always the one who cooked. I could count the number of times she'd made a meal for me on one hand. But ever since Joey got back, she was constantly cooking for him, whipping up all kinds of elaborate meals. "Honey, you're home," she said, turning to give me a sweet smile. I just frowned and said nothing. "Well, look who it is. You actually showed up, Edward." A voice called from the living room. Joey sauntered out from the living room, followed by Chloe. I let out a cold laugh and turned to Miriam. Miriam. I thought you wanted to prove how much you love me, and you decided to do that by inviting the two people I despise most into my home. Honey, don't say that about Joey, she said softly. But I get it. You love me so much. It's only natural you'd be a little jealous. In the past, if I'd said anything even remotely like that, she would have flown into a rage. Now her tone was so sickly sweet, I wondered if she was high on something. Honey, I invited Joey over so I could prove to you face to face that nothing has ever happened between us, she explained. Yeah, Edward, don't be so petty, Joey chimed in. Miriam and I just hang out. You know, grab a drink, go for a swim, stuff like that. Speaking of swimming, this is hilarious. One time I almost drowned like a total idiot, and Miriam had to give me mouth to mouth to save me. I totally slipped her some tongue on purpose. It was hysterical. Oh, and this one time she slept over. She wouldn't let me wash her back in the shower. Can you believe that? I used to do it all the time when we were kids, so I just went ahead and did it anyway. He recounted these stories with a smug, triumphant grin on his face. The color drained from Miriam's face. Chloe, meanwhile, was sitting on the sofa like she was at a movie, snacking on some chips and watching the whole drama unfold with rapt attention. I leaned against the wall and lit a cigarette. Okay, Miriam, I gave you the chance you asked for. You said what you needed to say. I don't believe a word of it. So now, I need all of you to get out of my life. If you don't leave, I'm calling the cops. I have to admit, hearing Joey's little stories, I felt a sharp twist in my gut. No one wants to hear that. Honey, it's not what he's saying. Miriam cried, her eyes welling up. Edward, you're a real piece of work. You know that? Joey yelled, pointing at me. Miriam is practically begging you to take her back, and this is the attitude you give her? You should be on your knees, thanking her. I opened the front door. You can see yourselves out, or I can have security do it for you. Honey, please don't be like this, Miriam pleaded. Look, I made a whole spread of all your favorite foods. I held up a hand to stop her. The first thing I smelled when I walked in was cilantro. Did you completely forget that I'm allergic to cilantro? Miriam froze, her eyes wide with panic. I pulled out my phone. I'll ask you one more time. Are you leaving, or am I calling security? Honey, just let me explain, please. One more chance. To my absolute shock, she dropped her knees right in front of me. Joey immediately yanked her back to her feet. Miriam, we don't have to take this crap. Let's go. He practically dragged her out the door. I let out a long, slow breath. The apartment fell silent, except for the quiet crunching of potato chips. You're still here? I asked, looking over at Chloe. She shook her head, looking like she wanted more of the show. I haven't had dinner yet. Mind if I stay and help you with this food? She didn't wait for an answer, just walked over to the table and sat down. After surveying the food, she waved me over. Edward, come on. Some of this stuff doesn't have cilantro in it. I sighed, washed my hands, and sat down across from her. Chloe ate like a starving wolf, with absolutely zero pretense of being ladylike. And it was clear she couldn't care less. She had this no-nonsense, almost tomboyish vibe that was surprisingly charming. She cracked open a can of beer, down the whole thing in one go, let out a long sigh, and then burped loudly. For some reason, I couldn't even get mad. You know, Edward, she said, propping her chin on her hand, people really romanticize this love thing. Most of the time, it's not actually that big of a deal. Like, I only agreed to go out with Joey in the first place to get my parents off my back. As for you, I can tell Miriam really does love you, just in a really messed up way. But she can't live without Joey either. She's the kind of woman who's fun to date for a while, but you'd never want to marry her. She pointed her fork at me. You're a classic career-driven guy. A dramatic relationship just slows down your grind. You need to find someone who's independent and self-sufficient. You sound like you've got this all figured out, I said. Lots of experience in the love department. Chloe shook her head, giving me a slightly sheepish grin. All theoretical. Joey was actually my first boyfriend. I'm kind of old-fashioned about my first time, so I'm glad we never slept together. It would have been a complete waste. You know the feeling? Like letting some mutt have you for nothing. I burst out laughing. This girl was something else. My mood had lifted considerably, so I grabbed a couple of beers for myself. Chloe was an amazing conversationalist. She could talk about anything. I talk about soccer, and she'd ask why Neymar always gets fouled so hard. I talk about basketball, and she'd ask me about Shaq's rap career. Even better, she was a fantastic listener. I could say anything, and she'd listen with this intense focus, like she was gathering material for her next book. So I kept drinking with her. I've never been able to hold my liquor, and before long, the room started to spin, and my head felt like it was stuffed with cotton. I drifted off into a hazy, sensual dream that felt incredibly real. I was jolted awake by a commotion. A woman was crying hysterically. It sounded like Miriam. I could vaguely hear Joey yelling something about how I had defiled his fiancée. He's lost his mind, I thought. Chloe's great, but I'm not that kind of guy. I opened my eyes. I was in my own bed, and something was wrapped around me like an octopus. I looked down and saw a person huddled under the covers, clinging to me. I pulled back the blanket. Chloe was there, staring up at me with wide eyes. Seriously, Edward, was that alcohol poison? She asked. How do we go from drinking to ending up in bed together? The questions came out rapid fire. I read this article once that said if a guy's truly blackout drunk, he's physically incapable of, performing. So what What the hell just happened? Oh god, my life is ruined. I have a few drinks with you and somehow lose my virginity. My head was spinning. I looked around the room. Standing in the doorway were security guards and police officers. My parents were there. Miriam's parents were there. Even a few of my best friends were there. Miriam was leaning against the door frame, a complete mess, tears streaming down her face. And Joey was pointing at me, screaming his head off. Edward, you slept with my fiancé. I'm pressing charges. I'm calling the cops. Even my own parents were looking at me with disappointment, as if they thought I'd done this deliberately as some kind of revenge. Only my friends were in the back, giving me a thumbs up and mouthing nice one. Stay calm, I told myself. Whatever happens, just stay calm. Chloe's words echoed in my head. If a guy is truly blackout drunk, he's physically incapable of performing. So, last night, was I actually drunk or not? I immediately yelled to my best friend, Dave. Dave, bag up all the leftover food and wine from the table. Get it tested. I think we were drugged. Dave didn't hesitate. He turned and bolted out of the room. Joey's face went white, and he made a move to follow him. Officer, I said quickly, and Miriam brought all that food and wine. Don't let him near it. Before the police officer could move, one of the building's security guards stepped in front of Joey, blocking his path. Miriam just stood there, sobbing uncontrollably, but she didn't move a muscle. From under the covers, Chloe's voice piped up. You know, he's got a point. I think we were drugged too. No wonder Joey was so desperate for me to come over here, even after I'd broken up with him. He kept saying it would be good material for my book. That guy is pure evil. Hold on a second, I said, pinching the bridge of my nose. You don't feel even a little bit violated right now. Chloe paused for a second, then said with a sigh, well, what am I supposed to do? If we were drugged, then you're a victim too, right? It's not like I can blame you. A little while later, we were both dressed and on our way to the police station in downtown LA to give our statements. On our way out, my mom pulled Chloe aside and apologized to her profusely. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Chloe, who usually seems so tough, actually crack a smile. At the station, the interviews began. Miriam's job was apparently to cry, and she did it with gusto, sobbing like her world was ending. Joey, meanwhile, denied everything, insisting he hadn't drugged us. The detective in charge spoke calmly. Mr. Carter has a security camera in his apartment. We're pulling the footage from last night as we speak. The food and wine have been sent to the lab for analysis. We should have the results shortly. Joey's face was sheet white, but he still refused to admit anything. Chloe and I were taken to a separate room for our interviews. I don't really know what happened, Chloe told the female officer. We were just drinking, and then suddenly I felt this hollowness like my brain had been sucked dry. The next thing I knew, I was looking at Edward and just had this overwhelming urge to kiss him. And then, well, one thing led to another. Her face turned red as she said it, but she also seemed weirdly eager to give all the details. Officer, I seriously hope you guys figure out what that drug was. That stuff is terrifying. The officer was trying hard not to smile. She turned to me. Mr. Carter, and what was your experience? My experience? I hesitated. Are we allowed to talk about that? The officer clarified. I'm not asking about your romantic feelings for Ms. Hayes. I'm asking about your physical response to the substance. Oh, right? I said, embarrassed. It was pretty much the same as hers. To put it bluntly, after I drank that wine, I just really wanted to be with a woman. Chloe leaned in, completely shameless. So what did you feel about me, specifically? I was so flabbergasted I couldn't speak. Her personality was so absurd, it was almost comical. You have the nerve to ask him that. Miriam suddenly shrieked, lunging at us from across the hall. You seduced my man, and now you're asking him how it was? You slut. I'll kill you. This was a police station, not her living room. She didn't even make it to us before 2 officers had her restrained. A short while later, the lab results came back. The wine had been laced with a powerful substance known to cause hallucinogenic effects and a high risk of addiction. Luckily, Chloe and I hadn't drunk very much of it, so we hadn't crossed a point of no return. The consequences could have been much worse. As it was, both of us now had to get regular medical checkups to monitor for any long-term effects. While the security footage didn't catch Joey physically putting the drug in the wine, it did clearly show him taking a call and then accepting a delivery of that specific case of red wine. The police followed the trail, pulling his phone records and recovering deleted iMessage chats that showed a clear record of him purchasing the drug online. When the full truth was revealed, Miriam completely fell apart. Joey, why? She sobbed. Why would you do this? It was for you. Joey shouted back, completely defiant. I drugged them to make them sleep together. It was to give you leverage. Miriam gritted her teeth. I never wanted leverage. I just wanted to be with my fiancé. What gave you the right to do something like this without asking me? Because you're my best friend. I was helping you, Joey declared, as if he were some kind of hero. Just then, another detective entered the room. We found another piece of footage. He played the clip on the monitor. It showed Joey talking to some muscle-bound guy from his gym. They were holding hands. Don't worry about it, the Joey on the screen said, his voice surprisingly high-pitched. Miriam is a total idiot. She believes every word I say. I told her that once her boyfriend boyfriend got more successful, he'd eventually cheat on her. And she totally bought it. And I gave her the brilliant idea to act all clingy with me and be cold to him, just to make him feel insecure and desperate. And she did everything I said. God, she really is in love with the guy. That's why we had to pull out all the stops to break them up, just so we could get them back together on our terms. Once she's squeezed a bit more money out of him, we'll both be set for a while. And my idiot fiancé is just as gullible. All I have to do is mention material for her novel, and she's like a dog with a bone. She'll definitely fall for it this time. It all comes down to how strong that stuff you gave me is. I stared at Joey, unable to believe it. You planned all of this? I had assumed he just wanted to break us up. I never dreamed he was also after my money. If Miriam wasn't so painfully stupid, I never would have gotten caught, Joey snarled, gritting his teeth. Joey, I always thought of you as family, Miriam said, her voice chillingly cold. And this is how you used me. Of course I used an idiot like you. Who else would I use? He sneered. I bet you didn't even know this. That study abroad spot in college? It was supposed to be yours. I'm the one who lied to the department head and spread all those rumors about you. That's how I got it. I heard you were completely devastated. So that was it. All that time, Miriam had been a wreck not because Joey was leaving, but because he had stolen her chance to go abroad. Miriam didn't spare Joey another glance. She just turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. Edward, I swear, she choked out, you're the only one I've ever loved in my entire life. I only hung out with Joey to get a reaction out of you, to make you jealous, to make you pay more attention to me. The busier and more successful you got, the less time you had for me. I felt so insecure. I just wanted things to be like they were before. Demanding that $100,000, she cried, that was just a test. I just wanted to see how much you really cared. I sighed. Miriam, that all sounds incredibly hollow right now. I never neglected you. I spent almost as much time with you as I did at work. After pulling an all-nighter at the office, I would choose seeing you over sleeping just to spend a little more time with you. If you really trusted me, why didn't you just talk to me? You know perfectly well that I would have done anything for you, no matter how unreasonable. But you didn't talk to me. You talked to Joey. You treated his ridiculous ideas like they were gospel. To me, that's betrayal. Let's just stop, Miriam. We're really over. She shook her head wildly. Edward, please, you can't leave me. I'll die without you. She pointed a trembling finger at Chloe. Honey, if you just come back to me, I'll even let you keep seeing her. I can accept that. She had completely lost her mind. And in the moment she finally snapped, I had never felt more clear-headed. It's over. That's all I said. There was nothing more to say. Before long, Joey was formally indicted. His muscle-bound accomplice from the gym was arrested too. A lawyer friend of mine said that given the severity of their crimes, they were looking at 10 years minimum. In my opinion, that was getting off easy. The withdrawal from that drug was brutal. Chloe and I became withdrawal buddies, as she called it. Whenever the cravings got too intense, she'd suggest a moderate amount of physical activity to help us distract ourselves and ease the tension. And just like that, while fighting off the aftereffects of the drug, we forged a strange, intense, and completely new kind of relationship. Just as we were getting used to this delicate and intensely physical arrangement, some bombshell news about Miriam and Joey broke. Turns out, Joey had some pre-existing condition and managed to get released on medical parole. And Miriam, she went to his hospital room with a knife and stabbed him 18 times, killing him on the spot. She left a video for me. Edward, she began, in my whole life, you are the only one I have ever truly loved. I know now that I've lost you forever and there's no meaning in living anymore. So I'm going to go, and I'm taking your biggest problem with me. But I still love you. I'll love you until I die. And in the next life, I hope I can meet you again. I originally planned to use this video to threaten you. Knowing your personality, you would have caved under the pressure. You would have taken me back, and you would have been good to me. But that wouldn't be love. I can just imagine how miserable you would be if we got back together. I don't want to put you through that pain anymore. So for once, I'm not going to be selfish. I've always been selfish. My parents never gave me enough love when I was a child, so I grew up broken. Then I met you, and I fell into this sick, possessive obsession. But here, at the end of my life, I don't want to be selfish anymore. Chloe and I went to Miriam's funeral together. I couldn't find a single word of comfort to say to her parents. Maybe I'm just too soft, but I felt this deep, persistent guilt. I even found myself thinking that if I had known it would come to this, maybe I should have just given in back then, even if it meant living a miserable life. But it was too late for all that. On the drive home, Chloe suddenly asked me, does being with me just constantly remind you of Miriam? Does it make you miserable? I kept my eyes on the road and just shook my head. Let the past be the past. Dwelling on it only makes it hurt more. Besides, you're the one who told me I needed to find an independent woman, and you are definitely independent. Don't take everything I say as gospel, she huffed. I only said that because I didn't know what love was back then. Ever since I got with you, I've become completely attached. Edward, I'm going to be super clingy from now on. If you can't handle that, you need to tell me now, because once I'm in too deep, it'll be hard to get out. She gave me a mischievous little smile. I reached over and ruffled her hair. That's perfect, because I'm pretty clingy myself, and I'm not some career-driven guy at all. all. From start to finish, I've just been a hopeless romantic. Some relationships are like a high fever. While you're in it, you're lost in a burning dependency, mistaking self-destruction for devotion and gut-wrenching pain for proof of love. You tell yourself if you can just hold on a little longer, the fever will break and everything will be fine again. But the real turning point is rarely a dramatic explosion. It's the quiet decision you make when you've finally had enough. I'm choosing to live for myself. This isn't betrayal. It's the ultimate loyalty to your own soul. You let go of the person draining you not out of hate, but because you can finally hear that quiet, steady voice inside telling you that you also deserve kindness, that you deserve a love that lets you breathe. The end of this story leaves us with a heavy question. When someone says, "I'll die without you," is it love or is it a hostage situation? And when her final words are, "For once, I'm not being selfish," is it a final act of selfless love or is it the ultimate act of possession, paid for with destruction? Perhaps real growth isn't about erasing the scars of the past, but learning to carry them as you move forward. The past can't be changed, but you can choose not to be defined by it. May we all find the courage to rebuild on top of the wreckage, not to prove a point to anyone else, but to prove to ourselves that even after walking through hell, we still have the power to choose the light.